Okay, Assalamu alaikum students. So today we will be attempting October-November 2024 IGCSE Physics Paper 4 Variant 2. So let's start with the paper. Make sure you have a calculator. Let's zoom in on the first question. Okay. So you have a rocket that has an initial mass of what? 7.4 into 10 raised to the power of 6 kg. आपके पास एक rocket है जिसका initial mass ये है. You have to calculate the initial weight of the rocket. How will you do that? Weight is equals to mg. Mass क्या है बेटा? 7.4 into 10 raised to the power of 6. Whenever सवाल में आपको g की वैल्यू नहीं प्रोवाइडेड होगी, you will take g as 9.8. मल्टीप्लाई कर दो. What does your weight comes out to be? हाँ जी, वेट क्या आ जाता है? 7.4 10 raised to the power of 6 into 9.8. This comes out to be 7.3. Let's write it 7.3 into 10 raised to the power of 7 Newton. Correct to two significant figures. Always remember in IGCSE physics, you write your answers till two significant figures. Determine in words or define in words the term weight. You have to define the term weight in your words. What will you say? Weight is the gravitational force on a mass. Weight क्या है? Gravitational force on a mass. Weight is the gravitational force on a mass. Gravitational force on a mass. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Figure 1.1 shows the part of the speed time graph for the rocket as it leaves the ground and travels into space. ठीक है, ये speed time graph है. Okay. Describe the motion of the rocket. You have to describe the motion of the rocket from point O to point A. आपने point O से लेकर A तक motion of the rocket define करना. You have to describe the motion of the rocket from point O till point A. Beta, whenever you see the speed time graph, you have to remember one thing. Gradient of a speed time graph is equals to acceleration. From point O to A, क्या हो रहा है? Your gradient is increasing and positive. That means your acceleration will also be positive and increasing. So you can write it here. From O to A, your acceleration is increasing. ठीक है. What is happening from A to B? A to B क्या हो रहा है बेटा? A से लेकर B तक क्या हो रहा है? If you analyze from point A to point B, what is happening? You have a constant gradient. The gradient is constant and positive. इसका मतलब क्या है? Your acceleration will also be constant and positive. So let's write it here. Acceleration is constant. You can say uniform as well. Both of them are same thing. कांस्टेंट एंड यूनिफॉर्म इंटरचेंजेबल वर्ड्स होते हैं. हमेशा ये बात याद रखना. एएस लेवल में भी ये बात बहुत काम आई. लेट्स फर्दर मूव अहेड. Draw a tangent to the graph at time t is equals to 400 seconds and use this to calculate the acceleration of the rocket at this time. Show your work. You have to draw a tangent at time t is equals to 400 seconds to calculate what? Acceleration of the rocket. तो बेटा आ जाओ यहाँ पे 400 seconds पे. Let's zoom in a bit. Let's take this, minimize this. इसको यहाँ पे रख देते हैं. Let's erase the highlighting. And now you have to draw a tangent at 400 seconds. Maybe here, let's draw a tangent. Let's try our best because my drawing skills are very, very bad. So yeah, let's try this out. I think we will have to flip it थोड़ा सा. हाँ, this I think is a proper enough tangent. Okay. You have a tangent now. Now, how will you calculate the gradient of this tangent? इस tangent का gradient कैसे निकालोगे? Yes. How will you calculate the gradient of this tangent? How will you calculate the gradient of this tangent? You can take 2 points. The first point can be this. That is x-axis 400, y-axis will be this point. What is this point? Can you see you are going from 4,000 to 5,000? You are covering 1,000 units in what? 5 boxes. You are covering 1,000 units in 5 boxes. एक बॉक्स कितने यूनिट्स कवर करेगा बेटा? 200. This will be what? 4,200. What will be your second point? Second point कौन सा ले ले? Which point can be your second point? Which is an accurate point that we can take? Maybe we can take this point. Uh, yeah, we can take this one. This is what? Y-axis में this is? Y-axis में this is 6,400. And in the x-axis, this will be roughly here. Now, what is this? Let's find out. You are going from 400 to 600. आप 200 units cover कर रहे हो in how many boxes? 10 boxes बेटा. एक बॉक्स कितने यूनिट्स के इक्वल होगा? 20. This will be 500 and this will be 520. So you can write that this is 520 in the x-axis, 6400 in the y-axis. So let's write these 2 points here. 400 comma 4200 and 520 comma 6400. Okay. Now you have to calculate the gradient using these points. How will you calculate the gradient using these points? Very easy. This is x1, this is y1, this is x2, this is y2. How will you calculate the gradient? Gradient is equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What is the value of y2? 6,400. What is the value of y1? 4,200. What is the value of x2? 520. What is the value of x1? 400. Can you calculate the gradient and consequently can you calculate the acceleration? Yes. 4200 divided by 0 minus 400. The acceleration comes out to be 18.3 meters per second square. If I round it off till two significant figures, 18 ms square. Simple, nothing complicated, very easy. And if I show you the marking scheme, 1 second. If I show you the marking scheme, even if you have a bad drawing, but your gradient lies somewhere between, or your acceleration lies somewhere between 17 to 23, then basically you have done it correctly. ठीक है? अगर आपका आंसर 17 से 23 के बीच में कहीं भी आ रहा है, we are getting an answer of 18, we have done it correctly. Rockets are used to launch satellites into space, okay? When the satellite is released, the rocket returns to Earth, okay? Explain in terms of forces why the rocket reaches terminal velocity as it travels through the atmosphere back to the Earth. So what will you say? As speed of rocket increases, air resistance increases. What will happen? Air resistance becomes equal to weight. Resultant force 0 हो जाएगी. Acceleration becomes 0. You reach a constant terminal velocity. How will you write this? You will say as velocity of the rocket increases, what will happen? Air resistance increases. Furthermore, what will you say? When air resistance equals weight, when air resistance equals weight, the rocket reaches a terminal the when air resistance equals weight, let's write one more point. The resultant force Let's not leave any stone unturned. The resultant force becomes zero, and the rocket reaches a terminal reaches a terminal velocity. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Let's further move ahead. आगे बढ़ते हैं बच्चों. Figure 2.1 shows a golfer about to hit a golf ball with a golf club. Okay. The initial momentum of the golf ball is zero. Okay. So the initial momentum is zero. Okay. Define momentum. What is momentum? Momentum is the product of mass and velocity. Momentum क्या है? Product of mass and velocity. Simple. The golf club is in contact with the ball for this amount of time. This is your time. The velocity of the golf ball as it leaves is 41. This is the velocity. The golf ball has a mass of this. Okay. Calculate the impulse on the golf ball. How will you calculate the impulse? Impulse is equal to change in momentum. Your change in momentum is equal to the final momentum minus initial momentum. बेटा आपका final momentum क्या होगा? Mass into the final velocity minus initial momentum. What is initial momentum? Zero. You have already seen here. Zero. What is the mass? 0.046. What is the final velocity? 41. क्या आंसर आ जाएगा इसका? 0.046 into 41. This comes out to be 1.9 Newton second is your impulse. Simple, nothing complicated here. बहुत easy रखा है हमने इसको. Okay. आगे बढ़ते हैं बेटा. Calculate the force applied. Now you have to calculate the force applied. How will you calculate the force applied? How will you calculate the force applied? Any ideas, geniuses? कोई idea देना चाहोगे? How will you calculate the force applied? Force applied is equals to the change in momentum over change in time. You have already calculated the change in momentum, that is equals to the impulse 1.9 divided by the change in time or the time taken for collision, that is 5 into 10 raised to the power of minus 4. 5 into 10 raised to the power of minus 4. What does the answer of force comes out to be? 1.9 divided by 5 into 10 raised to the power of minus 4. The answer of force comes out to be 3800 Newton. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. आगे बढ़ते हैं भाई. Now, state two energy sources for which radiation from the sun is the main source of energy. First of all, solar energy के लिए होता है ऐसा. For solar energy, the main source of energy is the sun. What is another source of energy? जिसकी major source of energy क्या है? Sun. You can say waves या फिर tidal energy also depend on sun. A wind turbine is used to generate electricity. Okay. The useful output from the turbine in 1 second is 6000 joules. This is your energy output. The kinetic energy of the wind hitting the turbine in 1 second is this. This is your energy input. The velocity of the wind hitting is this. Okay, you have the velocity of the wind hitting as well. Show that the mass of the air hitting the turbine each second is 550 kg. Okay, so you have to calculate the mass. How will you do that? You know kinetic energy is equals to 1 upon 2 mv square. Kinetic energy की value क्या है? 11,000. Do you know the velocity? Yep. 1 upon 2 into mass into 6.3 का square is equals to 11,000. Can you calculate the mass? Yep. Mass is equals to what? 11,000 into 2 divided by 6.3 ka whole square. 550 kg comes out to be your mass. Now you have to calculate the efficiency of the turbine. Efficiency of the turbine किस तरह निकलेगा? Energy output divided by the energy input into 100. What is the energy output? 600. 6,000. What is the energy input? 11,000. Multiplied by 100. What is the efficiency? Efficiency क्या है भाई? 55% comes out to be your efficiency. Tidal energy and wind energy are both renewable energy sources. Suggest one reason why tidal energy is a more useful energy source than wind energy. भाई tidal energy useful source क्यों है compared to wind energy? Ignore the cost of construction and maintenance. Tidal energy is more consistent, more reliable compared to wind energy. बेटा जो आपकी waves होती हैं they follow a regular pattern. However, wind का कोई pattern नहीं होता. You can say tidal energy or the tidal energy is more reliable as the tides follow a regular pattern. As the tides follow a regular pattern. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. आगे बढ़ते हैं बच्चों. चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं. Now let's see this. Figure 4.1, okay, shows a pressure cooker on an electric heating element. The cooker has a tight fitting lid. Okay, cooker के ऊपर एक tight fitting lid लगी हुई है. Okay. The pressure cooker is half full of water. As the water is heated, some water evaporates before the water boils. Okay. State two differences between evaporation and boiling of water. Okay, you have to state two differences between evaporation and boiling of water. Firstly, evaporation occurs at the surface, whereas boiling occurs throughout the liquid. Boiling क्या करती है? Throughout the liquid occur करती है. What will be the second difference? Evaporation occurs at all temperatures, whereas boiling occurs only at boiling point. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं. As the water is heated, the pressure of the gas inside the cooker increases. Explain this increase in pressure in terms of particles. How will you explain this increase in pressure in terms of particles? You will say, as the temperature increases, the kinetic energy, the kinetic energy, the kinetic energy of particles increases. The kinetic energy of particle increases. Perfect. As the kinetic energy of particle increases, क्या होगा? There will be more frequent collisions. Hence, there will be more frequent collisions. Hence, there will be more frequent collisions between between the between the particles and what? Between the particles and the walls of the cooker. This increases the force on the cooker and causes the pressure to increase as well. Causes the pressure to increase as well. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's move ahead. On a sunny day, the temperature of a black thermic road and the air above the road increases. Explain why the surface temperature of thermic increases. हमने बताना है why the surface temperature of thermic increases. Because the thermic absorbs infrared radiation from the sun and hence its temperature increases. You will say the thermic absorbs the infrared radiation, the infrared radiations from the sun, from the sun, and hence its temperature increases. Simple as that, nothing complicated, easy peasy, lemon squeeze. State the method of thermal energy transfer from the thermic to the air immediately above the road. बेटा कभी भी अगर आपके दो surfaces contact में होते हैं, let's say this is your thermic and this is the air above it. Whenever two surfaces are directly in contact, the method of heat transfer is conduction. Always remember that. State the main method of thermal energy transfer from the air immediately above the road to the rest of the air. You will say that is convection. हमेशा gases के अंदर या liquids के अंदर heat transfer करने का process is convection. Explain why the surface temperature of thermic is higher than the surrounding air temperature. You have to tell why the surface temperature of black thermic is much higher compared to the surrounding air. What will you say? Black thermic is a good absorber of heat and a poor emitter of heat. Hence, the temperature of the thermic is higher compared to the surrounding air. Simple लिखेंगे इसको. You can say, you can simply write here that a black thermic is a good absorber of heat and poor emitter of heat. Hence, its temperature is greater compared to the surrounding air. Hence, its temperature is higher compared to the surrounding air. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's move ahead. A student plays violin. Okay, a student plays violin near the nearby doorway to a large room. Figure 6.1 shows a young teacher standing where he can hear the sound but cannot see the student. ये young teacher है जो कि sound hear कर सकता है but cannot see the student. State the wave effect that allows the young teacher to hear the sound from the violin at the position he is standing. Basic diffraction हो रही है. Sound waves come here, they get diffracted and they are heard by the young teacher. Basic क्या हो रही है? Diffraction. Let's write it down. Basic diffraction is happening. Okay. Calculate the frequency of a sound with a wavelength of this. The speed of sound is this. You will apply V is equals to F lambda. Velocity क्या है भाई? 340. Frequency हमने निकालनी है. Lambda क्या है? 0.75. Frequency क्या आ जाएगी? 340 divided by 0.75. What does your frequency comes out to be? 340 divided by 0.75. This comes out to be 450 hertz. Simple. Your frequency comes out to be 450 hertz. Nothing complicated here. ठीक है. आगे बढ़ते हैं जी. Let's further move ahead. Let's further see what is in store. ठीक है. अब क्या लिखना है भाई? A violin produces sound in the frequency range 200 hertz to 3800 hertz. The width of the open doorway is 0.75 meters. अच्छा, ये width of the open doorway is 0.75 meters. Explain why the young teachers hear the frequency calculated in A part 2. अच्छा, ये frequency here हो जाती है. But finds the frequency of 3500 hertz much harder to hear. बेटा एग्जामिनर हमें ये कह रहा है कि the width of the open gap way is 0.75. ये जो आपका गैप साइज है वो 0.75 मीटर है और आपकी वेवलेंथ क्या है? वो भी 0.75 मीटर है. परफेक्ट. When the wavelength is equals to the gap size, there is considerable या significant amount of diffraction. बेटा जब आपकी वेवलेंथ गैप साइज के इक्वल है तो देयर इज सिग्निफिकेंट अमाउंट ऑफ डिफ्रैक्शन यू कैन इजीली हियर द साउंड एज द यंग टीचर. But when you increase the frequency of sound to 3500 hertz, जब आप frequency of sound को 3500 hertz कर देते हो, you are increasing the frequency. What will happen when you increase the frequency of sound? What happens? The wavelength reduces. As the wavelength reduces, what will happen? हाँ जी, wavelength reduce होगा तो क्या होगा? The wavelength will become less compared to the gap size. हमारा gap size x बड़ा हो जाएगा compared to the wavelength. Hence you will have less diffraction. Simple. So how will you write this answer? बेटा इस आंसर को किस तरह लिखोगे? हाँ जी, इस आंसर को किस तरह लिखोगे? You will say large diffraction occurs when the gap size was similar to the wavelength. You will say large diffraction occurred when gap size was equal to wavelength. However, as frequency increases, what happens? Wavelength reduces and wavelength becomes smaller, then gap size causing less diffraction. Simple as that, nothing complicated. Let's move ahead. A plane mirror is positioned at point X so that the teacher can see the student on figure 6.1. अच्छा जी, plane mirror कहाँ पे position किया हुआ है हमने point X पे, so that the teacher can now see the student. Okay, so that now the teacher can see the student. Perfect. Okay. Draw a light ray from the violin to point X and from point X to the teacher. Draw and label the mirror. Add an arrow to the ray to show how the teacher sees the student. Use a sharp ruler and a scale for this drawing. Okay. First of all, आप mirror कैसे draw करोगे यहाँ पे? Somewhat like this. Draw it. Your mirror will be somewhat like this. Okay, this is your mirror. What will happen? Light rays will come from the student and hit the mirror. Light rays क्या करेंगी? स्टूडेंट से आएंगी और मिरर पे हिट करेंगी like this, and these light rays will reflect back like this into the teacher's eyes. This is your normal, this is your angle of incidence, this is your angle of refraction. ठीक है, एंगल ऑफ रिफ्लेक्शन और एंगल ऑफ इंसिडेंस भी मार्क कर दिया. लाइट रे आई हिट करी. Also you can draw this light ray in a much better manner like this. Okay, this is somewhat your light ray. This comes as your, okay, so let me draw the drawing again. I don't know why did I mess it up. So let's say this is your mirror. Okay, this is your mirror. Your light ray come and hit the mirror like this. इस तरह से, and they get reflected back into the eyes like this. Simple. This is your normal, this is your angle of incidence, this is your angle of reflection. You had to draw all these things. I have labeled the mirror as well. चलो जी आगे बढ़ते हैं. A washing machine has an electric motor and an electric heater. Figure 7.1 shows a simplified diagram for the washing machine. Okay, so this is a simplified diagram for the washing machine. The heater has a resistance of what? 25 ohm. Okay, heater has a resistance of what? 25 ohms. Okay. The power supply has an electromotive force of 230. Okay, the power supply has an electromotive force of 230. State the meaning of electromotive force. What is the meaning of electromotive force? Work done per unit charge, per unit charge in moving a charge across the complete circuit. Across the complete circuit. ठीक है. State the potential difference across the heater. If the power supply has a potential difference of 230, the potential difference across the heater will also be 230. Simple. Calculate the current in the heater. How will you calculate the current in the heater? Very, very easy. Your resistance of the heater is 25 ohms. Your voltage is 230. Can you calculate the current? Yep. V is equals to IR. Voltage 230 है. I यहाँ पे आ गया resistance 25 है. Can you calculate the current? Current I is equals to 230 divided by 25. What does your current comes out to be? Your current is equals to 9.2 amperes. Okay. The current in the heater that is here is 9.2 amperes. Okay. The current in the motor is 1.6 amperes. Okay. So let's also mark that. The current in the motor is 1.6 amperes. Okay. Determine the reading on the M meter in figure 7.1. Explain your answer. You have to determine the reading on the M meter. बेटा M meter पे reading क्या आएगी? दोनों का sum 9.2 plus 1.6 दोनों का sum क्या हो जाएगा? 9.2 plus 1.6 दोनों का sum क्या हो जाएगा? 10.8 ampere is your reading on the M meter. And what can be your explanation? Explanation क्या होगी? The total current is the sum of individual branches, is the sum of current in individual branches. And that is displayed on the ammeter. Total current ammeter पे display हो रहा है और total current किसके equal है? Sum of the current in individual branches. Let's move further. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Now let's see this. A fisherman uses high frequency sound waves to locate fish in the sea. Okay. Figure 8.1 shows the sound waves emitted from the boat. अच्छा जी ये sound waves emit हो रही हैं from the boat. State the name of sound waves which have a frequency greater than 20 kilohertz. 20 kilohertz से greater frequency किसकी होती है? Ultrasounds. Okay. High frequency sound waves travel from the boat through the sea water. Okay. The speed of the sound in water is this. The seabed is 22 meter below. Calculate the time taken for the boat to receive the reflected wave from the seabed after the sound is emitted. तो बेटा देखो ये seabed कितना दूर है? 22 meters. What will happen? The sound waves will go downward, they will hit the seabed and they will come back upward. देखो ये जो साउंड वेव्स हैं जो अल्ट्रासाउंड आप इमिट कर रहे हो वो डिस्टेंस कितना ट्रैवल करेंगे? 2 times 22. Why? Because once the ultrasounds are going downward, they are hitting the seabed and then they are returning back upward. Ultrasounds बेटा दो दफा डिस्टेंस ट्रैवल कर रही हैं. First they are going downward, they are hitting the seabed and then they are getting reflected back upwards. तो total distance कितना ट्रैवल कर रही है अल्ट्रासाउंड? 2 into 22, that is 44 meters. Do you have the speed of the ultrasound as well? Yep, I do have the speed of the sound or the ultrasound, that is 1500. Can I calculate the time? Yes. Time is equals to distance over speed. Distance क्या है भाई? 44. Speed क्या है? 1500. Time क्या आ जाएगा? What is the time taken for this to travel? हाँ जी. What is the time taken for the ultrasound to go hit the seabed and return back? 0.029 seconds. Simple. Let's further move ahead. फिगर 8.2 shows a fish below the boat. अच्छा जी, अब आपके पास एक फिश आ गई है below the boat. Okay. Describe and explain how the reflected sound wave received by the boat from the fish differs from the reflected sound wave received from the seabed. बेटा, जो फिश के ऊपर लग के रिफ्लेक्टेड साउंड वेव्स आ रही हैं, हाउ विल दे डिफर कंपेयर टू द रिफ्लेक्टेड साउंड वेव्स फ्रॉम द सीबेड? हमेशा हमेशा यू रियलाइज दैट when ultrasound will get reflected from the fish. बेटा, अल्ट्रासाउंड अगर फिश से रिफ्लेक्ट होंगी तो व्हाट विल हैपन? फिश हैज अ स्मॉलर एरिया, है ना? फिश का एरिया इज स्मॉलर कंपेयर टू द सी बेड. Hence, only very limited amount of ultrasound will be reflected backward. So you will say reflected waves. Reflected waves क्या होंगी? Reflected waves are weaker and have a smaller amplitude and have a smaller amplitude. Why? Because the fish, because the fish is what? Because the fish is what? Because the fish is smaller compared to the seabed. Compared to the seabed. Simple. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. आगे बढ़ते हैं जी. Now let's see this. Figure 9.1 shows a wireless charging plate used to charge the battery in a mobile phone. The coil of the wire is part of an electrical circuit. ठीक है, coil of the wire is part of an electrical circuit. The charging plate is connected to an AC power supply. The power supply is turned on. Describe the magnetic field around the charging plate in terms of magnitude and direction. You have to describe the magnetic field around the charging plate in terms of its magnitude and direction. आपने magnetic field को define करना है in terms of its magnitude and direction. How will you do that? बहुत 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 easy है. First of all, can you realize the magnetic field is stronger closer to the coil of the wire? है ना? Towards the coil of the wire, magnetic field क्या है? Stronger है. As you move away from the coil of the wire, magnetic field का magnitude decreases. Secondly, the direction of magnetic field keeps on changing. Why? Because you have an alternating current. So you will say the magnetic field you will say the magnetic field, the magnetic field is strongest, strongest near the coil of the wire, near the coil of the wire. How? And इसके आगे आप मोर ओवर करके लिख सकते हो. मोर ओवर, the direction of magnetic field, the direction of magnetic field keeps या changes. The direction of magnetic field changes. Why? Because of alternating current या alternating power supply. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं. A mobile phone is placed on a charging plate as shown in figure 9.2. ये मोबाइल फोन प्लेस किया हुआ है हमने on a charging plate. The coil in the mobile phone is part of a separate circuit that charges the battery. The coil is in the charging plate and the coil in the mobile phone acts like a transformer. Explain why there is a current in the secondary coil shown in figure 9.2. You have to tell why there is a current in the secondary coil as shown in figure 9.2. How will you say that? You will say the changing magnetic field, the changing magnetic field, the changing magnetic field of the charging plate. बेटा चार्जिंग प्लेट की जो मैग्नेटिक फील्ड है कट्स with the secondary coil with the secondary coil inducing EMF or generating EMF suggest why the transformer made from the charging plate and the mobile phone is not 100% efficient. बेटा हमने बताना है why the transformer made from the charging plate and the mobile phone is not 100% efficient. You will say some heat is lost to the surroundings. Simple, easy peasy, nothing complicated. आगे बढ़ते हैं. The mobile phone battery can be recharged using this charging plate and stores 4.5 into 10 raised to the power of 4 joules of energy when fully recharged. The current in the secondary coil is this, when the output voltage is this. Calculate the time taken to fully recharge a completely uncharged battery. You have to calculate the time to fully recharge a completely uncharged battery. How will you do that? हमें पता है एनर्जी इज इक्वल टू करंट इंटू वोल्टेज इंटू टाइम. एनर्जी आपको पता है 4.5 इंटू 10 रेज़ टू द पावर ऑफ 4. करंट क्या है बेटा 0.63. वोल्टेज क्या है 12. व्हाट इज योर वैल्यू ऑफ टाइम 4.5 10 raised to the power of 4 divided by 0.63 into 12. What does your time comes out to be? 4.5 into 10 raised to the power of 4.63 into 12. The time comes out to be 59 5 2. If I round it off till two significant figures, this will be 6000 seconds. ठीक है आगे बढ़ते हैं. Calculate the charge passing the battery in 60 seconds. Charge किस तरह से निकालते हैं? Charge is equal to current into time. Current की वैल्यू क्या है 0.63 multiplied by the time that is 60. Can you calculate the charge 0.63 into 60? Charge किसके इक्वल आ गया 38 coulombs. आगे पढ़ते हैं. Carbon 14 is a radioactive isotope of carbon. Carbon 12 is not radioactive. Explain how an atom of carbon 14 differs from an atom of carbon 12. You have to tell how an atom of carbon 14 differs from an atom of carbon 12. How will you tell that? कैसे बताओगे क्या बताओगे कार्बन 14 और कार्बन 12 में क्या फर्क है? You will say what? Carbon 14 contains more number of neutrons compared to carbon 12. है ना आप ये कह सकते हो. You can say carbon 14. अगर यहाँ पे मैं न्यूट्रॉन्स निकालूं कार्बन 14 के क्या हो जाएंगे 14 माइनस 6 दैट इज 8. कार्बन 12 के न्यूट्रॉन्स निकालो तो क्या हो जाएंगे 14 माइनस 6 दैट इज 6. You will say carbon 14 has two more neutrons compared to carbon 12. Simple. All living organisms both carbon 12 contain both carbon 12 and carbon 14. The ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 12 is 1 ratio 1 into 10 raised to the power of 12. Okay. Carbon 14 has a half life of 5700 years. Okay. When an organism dies, no new carbon is absorbed. The amount of carbon 12 is fixed in a dead organism. State how the amount of carbon 14 in a dead organism decreases with time. देखो कार्बन 14 क्या है एक रेडियो एक्टिव आइसोटोप है. एक रेडियो एक्टिव आइसोटोप की अमाउंट decreases to half of its value after each half life. कार्बन 14 एक रेडियो एक्टिव आइसोटोप है. The amount of carbon 14 halves after each half life. So you will say the amount of carbon 14 decreases to half or decreases by half after every 5,700 years. So you will say the amount of carbon 14 halves every 5,700 years. Easy. A sample of wood contains carbon 14 to carbon 12 atoms in the ratio of this 1 ratio 4 into 10 raised to the power of 12. Calculate how many year ago the tree died. हमने बताना है कि कितने साल पहले जो है ये ट्री डाई हो चुका है. द नॉर्मल कार्बन 14 टू कार्बन 12 रेशियो क्या था? 1 रेशियो 1 into 10 raised to the power of 12. After one half life, after 5,700 years, the carbon 12 amount remains same. 1 into 10 raised to the power of 12. Carbon 14 halves. ये 0.5 हो जाएगा. What will the new ratio become? Multiply both sides by 2. 1 ratio 2 into 10 raised to the power of 12. After further 5,700 years क्या होगा? Carbon 14 will again have 0.5 ratio 2 into 10 raised to the power of 12. Again multiply both sides by 2. 1 ratio 4 into 10 raised to the power of 12. This is the ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 12 that you want. How many years have passed by? 5,700, 5,700 plus कर दो. Plus 5,700. Total क्या हो जाएगा? 11,400 years is your total amount of years. Simple. Other radioactive isotopes have a different half-life. Okay, that's doable. Suggest the use of a radioactive isotope with a half-life of 1 hour. हमने बताना है अगर एक रेडियो एक्टिव आइसोटोप है जिसकी हाफ लाइफ 1 आवर है उसका यूज क्या होगा. एक्सप्लेन व्हाई अ शॉर्ट हाफ लाइफ इज सुटेबल फॉर दिस केस. बेटा शॉर्ट हाफ लाइफ का यूज क्या होता है? मेडिकल ट्रेसर्स में यूज होती है ये. मेडिकल ट्रेसर्स में शॉर्ट हाफ लाइफ वाले रेडियो एक्टिव आइसोटोप्स यूज होते हैं. एंड व्हाई डू वी नीड अ शॉर्ट हाफ लाइफ इन मेडिकल ट्रेसर्स? मेडिकल ट्रेसर्स में हमें शॉर्ट हाफ लाइफ क्यों चाहिए होती है? So that the radioactive tracer doesn't stay in the body for too long. Simple. आगे बढ़ते हैं. State the name of one planet that has a orbit further away from the sun than Venus. अच्छा जी कोई ऐसा planet बताओ जिसका orbit Venus से ज्यादा दूर हो. You can say Earth. State the name of one planet that has an orbit close to sun than Venus. कोई ऐसा orbit बताओ, कोई ऐसा planet बताओ जिसका orbit Venus से करीब हो. Mercury. Venus has an average radius of this, orbital period of this. You have to calculate the speed. V is equals to 2 pi r divided by capital T. 2 pi r 1.1 into 10 raised to the power of 11. What is capital T? The time period taken for the Earth to revolve, for the Venus to revolve around the Sun. ये क्या है? 220 Earth days. So let's convert it into seconds. 220 into 24 hours in one day into 60 minutes in 1 hour into 60 seconds in each minute. What is your orbital speed? Orbital speed क्या आ गई? 3.6 into 10 raised to the power of 4 meters per second. Simple. State the relationship between orbital speed of the planet and their distance from the sun. As the distance from the sun increases, orbital speed को क्या होगा? Orbital speed decreases. Simple. Nothing complicated here. Comets are balls of ice and dust. Some comets orbit the sun. State how the speed of the comet changes as it orbits the sun. Explain your answer using ideas about conservation of energy. You may include a label diagram in your answer. ठीक है. State how the speed of the comet changes as it orbits the sun. How will you tell that? First of all, you will say the comet orbits in an elliptical orbit around the sun. You can write that. Comet orbits in an elliptical orbit around the sun. मतलब एक ellipse type का orbit होता है. In an elliptical orbit around the sun. What will you further say? Further आप क्या कहोगे? As the comet moves closer to the sun, its speed increases. As the comet, as the comet moves closer to the sun, its speed increases, causing the kinetic energy to increase and gravitational potential energy decreases. Gravitational potential energy decreases. However, the total energy remains constant throughout. The total energy remains constant throughout. You can obviously write it in much smaller handwriting. Remains constant throughout. I think this was the last question of this paper. Yeah. I hope this paper was clear. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the comments.